So welcome to lab 4, and in lab 4 we will try to understand how Angular interacts with server-side technology using the HTTP services of Angular. Now this complete learning series will use Microsoft server-side technology as the background. So if you look at Microsoft server-side technology, they are all built on ASP.NET framework. So there are various server-side flavors, which Microsoft has built on ASP.NET framework. For example, the first one, which is very famous, is the web form, which has the code behind and server controls. Then we have MVC, where we do not have the code behind. It is more lightweight and it has a better architecture. And then we have Web API, which actually follows the HTTP protocol, or it actually follows the REST principles. So what we will do is, for our lab, we are going to go and use Web API, because if you see, web form is almost dead. MVC is there, but at this moment, I feel that Web API is more of a choice. And when we do the demo, I will tell you why it is, and you will also agree that Web API is a better choice as compared to MVC. But in case you want to really go and learn more MVC and Web API, I would suggest you to go and see our dedicated series, which is for MVC and Web API. For the server-side technology. But in this lab, I would like to just quickly interact with Angular, take data from the server-side technology, so that we can learn Angular in a better way. So I will definitely cover the basics of Web API, but my suggestion is, please go through the videos of MVC and Web API, which is dedicated only to both of these. So here I will introduce the basics, but in case you want more details, then you have to look at our full server-side labs, what we have done, that is learn MVC in 2 days series. So now what we will do is, we are going to have two projects inside Visual Studio. So we already have this solution here. So one project is the client side. So you can see this Angular customer project lab 4. So this is the client side project. In this we have Angular files, we have HTML. Now let us go and add one more project. And this project will be the Web API project. So I'm going to go here and create the server side. Now this is the server side. So we'll name this as, it's a customer project. So I'll say customer server. Okay. And we're going to go and use MVC 5. Actually, the latest version is MVC 6, but MVC 6 is still in beta and it is going through a lot of changes. So let us go and select MVC 5 for the safer side. So I'm going to go and select MVC 5 at this moment. So this is MVC 5 what I'm doing at this moment. And we will not be using web forms. We will not be using MVC. We will be using Web API. And also let us go and change this authentication to no authentication. Later on we will see how we can go and do forms authentication with Web API. Okay. And I will say okay. So there you can see that he has created the customer server project. Again, I will not go into each one of these folders at this moment, what they are doing, because already this we have explained in the Learn MVC series. So I would suggest you to go and watch that series for in-depth knowledge of the server side. Our main concentration here is Angular. Now, like for Angular, I did not want any kind of C# code. In the same way, when it comes to server side, I don't want any kind of code which is related to views, which is related to JavaScript, HTML, right? So let me go and make this server side more light. This is where, I feel that Microsoft can do really good. When I go and choose the template, I suddenly get stuck with unnecessary things. For example, at this moment, think about this. This is my Angular customer project, which is the client. When he goes and requests the server, right, he will only send me data. So I don't expect any HTML from him or anything JavaScript from him, right? So it does not make sense, to have a scripts folder, to have a fonts folder, to have HTML views, right? Because all that is going to go here, client side, isn't it? So this is where, I feel that, when I create a project using the Microsoft templates, I feel that they put in all in one go, and it does not make a project clean. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go and start deleting some of these files, because my goal of this customer server is to only send me data out, to do server side validation, right, to insert into SQL server. I don't want any kind of views, screens, right? So I'm going to go and delete this folder as well. I don't expect any kind of fonts, so I'm going to go and delete this as well. Fonts, etc., everything on the client side. Scripts folder, I don't want it, not needed, right? Content, yeah, again this CSS and Bootstrap, I think this all will go on the client side, right, in this Angular customer project. So again, I'm going to go and delete that. Areas, at this moment I don't have any areas, so I'm going to go and delete this as well. I'm going to go and delete a lot of things here. Actually, the only thing what I would like to keep here is the model and the controller folder, right? Again, these also we can delete. We'll create our own controllers later on. So you can see what I've done is I have actually downsized my web API to literally a very lightweight server project, where I have the controller and I have the models. The other things I really don't need, right? But definitely, this program is going to crash. So let us go and build. Let us go and do a rebuild here to just see that after so many deletes, you do expect something will go wrong. You can see that I do not see any compilation errors, but I am 100% sure that while I run this program, it can show me errors, right? So what I'm going to do is let us quickly go and run both of these projects in one go. Remember, this is the client, this is the server. So both of them have to run in order to communicate with each other, right? Now, in case you want to run both the projects, what you do, you set this as a startup project first. Then you go and select this as a startup project. So the best would be to go to the properties and make both of them as startup project. And we would like to first run the client and then run the server. So you can say multiple startup project, and I will say start this. So first start this and then start the server, right? So with this, when I do a control F5, both of the projects will run. So let me do a control F5. So we don't see any errors after deleting so many files while compile time, but I'm 100% I know that when I actually run the project, I should get some errors. So you can see now, this is 1308 port where one of the site is running, and the 2169 where the other is running. So I think this one is our client side. So if you see our name of the, so this one is customer.html. So let us check. So I think this is the client side, customer.html. So on 1308 you can see our Angular is running, and over here look at this, this is the web API, and you can see there are some errors here. You can see that I deleted those jQuery files, right? So it is actually throwing me exception. So let us go and correct them. So if you see, actually the exception is coming because I'm trying to run the bundling code, right? So I'm going to go and delete the bundling code. In case you are new to bundling and minification, please go and see the Learn MVC section where we have talked about it. But at this moment, I don't need this because all of my jQuery files have been deleted. So let me rebuild this. Let me again go back. Let me again reload. Let us see if those errors will go off. Yeah, there it is. So you can see it. I think the error has gone off. We don't have any control or anything. So it looks like everything is fine. This one, what you see, server error, is a very general error. It just says that there is nothing in your project. So I'm okay with that, right? So good. So the basic errors have been removed. So this is my client side, which is running on 1308 port. And this is my server side which is running on 2169. So on 2169 web API is running, and on 1308 Angular is running. So now let us try to understand that how the interaction between the client side and the server side would take place. The complete interaction actually goes through 3 steps. First thing, the Angular client side will make a post or a get or a put call to the server side. So this Angular customer project here, from this UI customer screen, it will actually send some HTTP action to the customer server, and the data will be sent in JSON format. So the complete data, the customer data, at this moment when I say data, means it is nothing but our customer data, right? So this customer name, customer code, all of this data will be sent in a JSON format, and this data or this action will be interpreted by the controller. So it will actually go and first hit the controller in the web API, and controller will interpret it. It will actually use some models, massage the data, insert into database, whatever, right? And then finally send the data back to the server side. So the second step is the controller will interpret the data and send the response. Now, while the response is sent, what Web API does, Web API says that what kind of data type does the client support. If the client says I can support XML, he will send XML format. If the client says that I can support JSON, it will actually send the JSON format. So basically there are three steps which takes place in this full interaction. First one, the Angular will send a post, get, put, delete. It will actually send the data in JSON format. Second, the controller will understand this call. It will actually go and do whatever data operation it wants to do with the data. And third, depending on what type of data the client is supporting, it will actually send XML or JSON. At this moment, we only have two data types, XML or JSON. Remember that Web API does not have a UI. Web API is all about data. So let us first go and add a controller, because as I've said that at the end of the day, the first hit from the Angular will come to the controller. So let me go and create a empty controller, Web API controller. You can see that here we have MVC5 controller and then we have Web API controller. So we need to select Web API at this moment. And what I will do is I will use this template here, Web API controller with read write action. So in this, what will happen? It will actually give me all the ready-made methods, empty methods, so that I don't have to code from scratch, right? So I'm going to go and add this, and I will say this is a customer controller. And there it is, creating the controller, and you can see there our controller is created. And you can see that the customer controller is having the HTTP methods like get, post, put, delete, right? That's why the name of this technology is Web API. What is the Web's API? What is a Web's API? HTTP API. It is post, it is put, it is get, it is delete. Web API follows HTTP protocol. So that's why people prefer this when it comes to talking with clients like HTML and JavaScript and Angular. In simple words, Web API follows REST principles. What do REST principles say? REST principle says only one thing: follow the HTTP protocol, follow post, follow get, put, delete. For example, this post here intends to insert data. So don't go and create your own method like public void save. So basically what REST says that HTML, JavaScript, these guys actually know these HTTP methods like post, get, put, delete. And if your Web API can follow that, then the communication between the client and the server side will become very much standardized. That's what Web API is all about. So from the client side, that means from Angular, we are now going to go and send this customer object to the server, right? So this complete customer object, we want to go and send it to the server side. So in the post here, the object would actually come in, right? So that means that on the server side now, for this JavaScript class, we should have a mapping, a C# class which is mapping, right? Remember, this is JavaScript class. It is lying on the client side. When the data comes to the server side, I would like to have a similar class here with all of these 4 properties, so that I can capture all the data what we are getting from the client side, right? So let us go to our Web API and let us go and create a model, and we will term this model as customer. Remember, model at the end of the day is nothing but it is a C# class. So you can see from the Web API we just need 2 things. One is a controller and one is a model. The controller takes the request and we get the data inside this model or inside this customer format, right? In the customer object format. So over here I need to go and create the similar type of objects. So we had customer code there. So I'm going to go and have a customer code here. We had customer name there. So I'm going to go and have a customer name here. And in the same way, I have created the customer amount and sales date and time property, right? So when Angular sends a post, we want this customer object to be filled and sent to the controller, right? So over here, we need to now go and import that model. Remember that the customer class is in the models namespace. So I've imported the model here, and in the post now over here, I expect him to fill my customer data. So from Angular, he will make a post call, and all of this data, what is there in this customer name, customer code, customer amount, right? All of those objects data would be sent here into this C# object, right? So because of JSON, because at the end of the day he's going to go and send JSON, automatically the property values will come and will get flourished inside this customer object over here. And over here what I will do is I'm going to go and return back the customer object. So whatever object is coming here, I will just go and make it capital. So whatever data is coming, I will just make it capital for now. So this will indicate that this data has come from the server, right? So I'm just making it capital, right? For amount and etc., there is nothing called as capital, right? So I'm returning the customer object here. Now from Angular, in order to call this post method, we need to go and use the HTTP services of Angular. Remember, the time when I say services, that means that it is going to get dependency injected. So it will actually come here as a parameter, right? So over here, I need to go and say, please give me HTTP services of Angular. Now remember, whenever we are asking for ready-made services of Angular, we need to go and say $. So $HTTP. So you can see $scope for scope management. This is factory. This is our utility object. And here is our HTTP object. So using this, we want to go and post this customer data to this server over here, right? So now what we will do is, if you remember, we had this submit function over here, where we are checking if the data is proper or not. So if the data is proper, I would like to go and make a HTTP post call. So this post call we have to make to that web API URL. So we'll copy this web API URL later on. And what do you want to post? I want to post the full customer object, right? So we're going to go and post the full customer object. And if the data is successful, so if everything is successful from the server side, remember, from the server side, when everything is successful, we are returning the customer object. So what I'm saying here, I'm saying that if everything is successful, then please fire this success function, and in that success function set whatever is coming from the server side to the client. You can see here now, from the server side we are getting customer object, and the same customer object I am setting it to the customer object of JavaScript. So automatically the data will get mapped, right? So what will happen? I should actually see that my customer name becomes capital, right? So this web API URL is this localhost whatever. So I'll say post it to localhost API/customer. Remember, this API/customer is coming from here. The controller name is customer, right? And if you see in your app_start in the web API config.cs, it has given the routing template as API. That's why I have to say API/customer controller name, right? So in case if you remove this, then you can just say customer. In case you are new to routing, I would suggest you to go and see the MVC videos, where we have explained routing in more details. So great. So I think we are almost set. We are making a post, we are sending the customer object, and from there we are getting back a customer object and we are setting it over here, and automatically that capital everything should be seen on the client side, right? So I'm going to go and rebuild this application, and let us do a Control F5. Let us see if it is working or not. So there our application is running. So if I click on submit, you can see that nothing is working. If this was working, then this shiv would have been changed to capital, right? Because if you remember, in our server side we written a code. We said that as soon as the post happens, change that customer name to uppercase, but you can see that it is not working. So let us do a F12. Let us check that what is the problem. And you can see that it is saying access control allow origin. So it is saying that I cannot post to this localhost API / customer. In other words, I cannot post to this web API response to the pre-flight. I'll talk about what is this pre-flight. And it says that I cannot go and make a post from the origin localhost 1308. So what exactly is this? What has happened? Because it should just allow me to post. Why isn't it allowing me to post to web API? Now this is by design. If you see at this moment, both of our applications, that is the UI and the web API, they are running on different ports. So it is like saying that one is running on www.yahoo.com and the other guy is running on www.google.com. And definitely, from the security point of view, I would not want that, one side can just happily make a call to the other side without any kind of security checks, right? So that's why it is saying that I cannot make this cross domain call, you can say. So tell to the web API to go and enable cross domain calls. So in other words, this web API should go and enable cross domain calls, or else the client cannot make a call here. So let us go to the web API and let us go and enable cross domain calls on the web API. So once that is done, then the client can make a call. Now in order to enable cross domain posting, we need to go and do two things in the web API. Remember that cross domain postings can only be enabled by web API and not by the client. The client cannot do anything about it. The server has to issue the permission. So go to the web config file. You can see that there is a web config file in the web API. So go over here, and the first thing what you need to do is you need to go to the system.webserver section, and in that you need to go and post this. So you can see that I have posted a HTTP protocol section where I am saying that please allow all the origins to make posting. Please allow all types of headers to come in, and please allow all the methods, that is get, post and put, delete and options on this web API project, right? So with these three things, I'm telling that yes, I want all of the three things, get, post and put, delete, to be allowed to make postings from any other domain. Now when HTTP calls happen in the same domain, it happens very straightforward. For example, when the client sends a post, the server sends a response. When a client sends a get, the server sends a data, right? So it is just 1:1, that is, it's a simple thing. But when it's a cross domain call, then things starts becoming complicated. In cross domain call, there is one more extra call added called as a pre-flight call. So when it's a cross domain call, the first thing the client makes a call and he says that, can you tell me, server, what options have you enabled on your server, right? So the server says I have enabled get, I have enabled post, I have enabled put, I have enabled delete. So depending on what you have enabled in your web config file, he sends those options to the client, and after that the client makes the main call, or it makes that main call, that is a post or the get call. So remember that when you are doing a cross domain call, you will at least find one extra call, and that extra call is termed as a pre-flight call. So first the pre-flight call happens with options, asking the server that what things you have, and after that the actual call happens. Now when this pre-flight call happens, we do not intend to send any kind of response to the client, because this call is a call, just to question that what things we have, right? So we need to handle this pre-flight call saying that we are not going to send out any response to the client. So to handle pre-flight call, we need to go to the global.asx, and over there we need to go and put some code in the application begin request event. So you can see here in the application begin request event, I have put some some code. This application begin request is an event which gets fired every time a request comes to IIS. So what I'm saying here, if the call is having options means it is not having a put, it is not having a post, it is not having a delete, it is not having a get, it is asking for questions to the server, then please do not send any kind of response, just flush out. So with this, no response will be sent to the client, and he would get his options in the headers, and then afterwards he will actually make the call. So we need two things to enable cross domain policy. One is we need to go and put this custom headers over here. And the second thing is we need to handle the pre-flight call. So let us go ahead and do a Control F5 and let us see what the output results are. So there you can see the application is now running. So let us go ahead and execute the client. So the client is running on 1308 port and the server is running on 2169 port. So I will go and run the customer.html. So we have Shiv here. So let us click on submit. You can see now it is becoming capital, right? So let us say I say Raju, and if I say submit, you can see now it is capital. So that means things are working. And also, out of curiosity, if you go and do a F12 to just see how things are, right? If you remember, I talked about flight and pre-flight. So let us go to network here. You can see now there are two calls here. There are two requests that are sent to the server. You can see the first request is the options, right? And then the second request is actually the post. So remember that whenever you are making a cross-domain call, in that, there is one more extra call added called as the options call. And for this options call, what we did, we actually did a response.flush. Also, I would like to bring to your notice that the complete communication between Angular and Web API is happening in JSON format. So for example, if you look at this second call here, post, you can see that in the request payload, look at this. When the request is sent, the complete data is sent in JSON format. You can see here, right? And the response also comes in JSON format. So basically now the complete communication here, between the client and the server is happening through JSON. And second thing, the first option, that is options, if you go here very quickly, out of curiosity, if you go to the response headers, you can see that it says which access control methods are allowed, right? So, that is just quickly, what is happening internally inside the request, when the data is sent from Angular to the server side. Now, this is really good. We have understood the $HTTP service. We now understand, how to make a post call. But let us go and complicate our example. This example is very simple. Let us say that, I go and type my name and I click on submit. After that, it goes to the server and it adds it to a database. And then it sends out a collection, and that collection we would like to go and display down in the grid below. So let us go to the controller here. Now, this complete lecture is all about Angular. So I do not want to really go and teach you ADO.NET and Entity Framework in this class. So what I would suggest is, in case you want to go and learn Entity Framework and ADO.NET, we have a separate section for ADO.NET, we have a separate section for Entity Framework. So in this lecture, let us concentrate on Angular. So what I will do is, rather than going and inserting into a database, I will just put it into a collection so that we do more Angular and we do less ADO.NET and Entity Framework, right? So what I will do here is, I'm going to go and create a list of customer, right? And whatever data is sent from the client side will be added into this list over here. So what I will do is, in the constructor, I'm going and adding some dummy data, right? So these are some dummy data I've added. So I've added Shift2 and Shift3 and some customer code and some customer amount. And what I will do is, in the post, as soon as this data comes in here, I'm going to go and add this object into that list. So I will go and say add this object into the list and just return back the object. So at this moment, I'm not doing any kind of database activity. I'm just adding it to a temporary list collection. So I'll say list of customer. So with this, what will happen is, we will get back a collection and we can work more on Angular rather than working more on Entity Framework or ADO.NET. Good. So at this moment, what is happening? There is some data what is there in the list. As soon as the client sends a submit, whatever data is there on the UI is getting added to the customer collection, and that customer collection is actually returning back. So now that he is returning a list, we have to make a lot of changes over here in the binding code, because now in the success function we are not getting a single record, we are getting multiple records. So now what we need to do is we need to go and create one more variable here in the scope object called as customers. So this variable will take the single record. So whatever we are typing on the screen with a single record will all be stored into this variable, but the collection will be stored into this variable. This square bracket here indicates that it is a JSON collection. Remember, single record of JSON goes like this, right? So this is a single record of JSON. The name of the property and the value, right? But if it is multiple record, then you will have a square bracket, comma, and then the next record. So for example, like this. So if you see here now, we have two records here, one record which has code equal to 1001 and the second record which has code equal to 1002. And you can see, because this is a JSON collection, we are starting with a square bracket and we are ending with a square bracket. So at this moment, I'm just saying that over here I'm going to go and have a JSON collection. The type is still not known, so I've just said empty square brackets. So as soon as the data comes in the success function, I would like to go and put this data into customers, plural, right? And whatever data is there in the customer, I will just go and clear it off. So I will just go and clear it off. So this is clearing the records, right? Clearing the record, right? So basically, as soon as the data comes in, I will fill the collection, and whatever is there on the screen, I'm going to go and clear that record off. So now that this data is coming inside this collection, we need to go and display it. But if you want to go and display a collection, then the first thing what we need to have is we need to have a way by which we can go and loop through this collection. For that, Angular has given something called as ng repeat. So let me go and create a table here, right? And I will say tr td. So this is the customer name, customer code, amount, your normal HTML this is, and the sales date, right? So just indent it. Whenever you write your program, you have to indent it. These kind of long lines are not readable. So there it is. So I need to now go and loop, right? So for that, I will go and paste here the tr, and I will say ng repeat. Look at this, ng repeat. You can see that why I chosen Visual Studio, because if you look at the syntaxes, Visual Studio is showing me IntelliSense here, right? So that's why I like Visual Studio. Ng repeat cust in customers. So here I will say, please go and display cust dot customer name. Remember, JavaScript is case sensitive. Angular is a JavaScript framework, so Angular is also case sensitive. Cust dot customer code, and cust dot sales date and time, right? Good. So we are all set. So let us see if this whole program is working or not. So let us go and do a Control F5. Let us see. So there the customer HTML is running. So I'm going to go and say Shiv from UI, right? And I'll say submit. You can see that there is some problem there, right? Good, and there are problems and we need to debug it, not an issue. So let us say F12. Let us go and see this. Okay. You can see this small error here which you are seeing, 404 not found. Don't worry too much about it, because this error is actually the favicon.icon error. So it's some icon on the Chrome which is not getting displayed. So don't worry on this, right? But you can see that there is some other problem here. So let us see. So let us go and debug the code now, right? I think it's a good idea to go and debug the code, because if you see now, actually, actually when I ran the program, it actually cleared the customer record, right? So this code did work, but then what happened here, right? So let us go and put debugger and let us try to debug this code. So again, for debugging JavaScript, I would recommend Chrome. For debugging C#, I would recommend Visual Studio, right? So in order to do debugging, I want to go and debug when the success happens. I want to go and debug before the post, and I also want to debug when the post happens on the server over here. So for C# debugging, we do this. For JavaScript debugging, I put the debuggers everywhere. So let us go and run and ensure that you have Chrome as the browser, right? So ensure that Chrome is your browser. So browse with Chrome. So Chrome is my default. So let us go and say start. So there it is. So first thing is I will do a F12, because remember, even I'm debugging JavaScript as well. So I want Chrome to also get into a debug mode, into a developer mode, so that I can see my debugging happening. So let me click on submit. So the time I click on submit, you can see that it makes a post, right, to the server. It sends also all the data from the client side. Very good. It adds it to the collection. So there is no problem on the server side. Let us go and run this. Now let us see what happens on the client side. So on the client side, let me go to developer tools. Let us go to sources. The data did not come back. Why? Let us again go back. Let us again post. You can see that the data never came back. So, and I wanted to show you this debugging live, because so that when you have problems, you can understand what to do. Submit. It went here. After that, it did not come here. That is strange. Okay. So for some reason he is not coming here, right? And second thing is, my debuggers are also not firing. If you see here, when I make a submit, this should also fire, right? It never came here actually. So let us go and rerun again. I think my Chrome debugging never happened. So let us go and rerun again. You can see that this debugger never ran. There are two debuggers on the client side. One is when the success function comes out, and the other one is when I press the button, right? So none of the debuggers actually ran. The server side debugging is running. Let me do a F12. So I'm on the sources, and also let me do quickly a view source to just check if really those debuggers are there or not, or is it like something is coming from a cache. So source, you can see that the debuggers are not present here. Can you see that? That means that this guy is coming from a cache. Okay, now we see our tables. What a hell. Okay, fine. I was just wondering that why my debuggers are not firing. So remember that in case something is coming from Chrome cache, you will have a problem. Good, good that these errors are happening. Good that you are able to see it. Good that you are able to see how to do JavaScript debugging and server side debugging. Okay, so don't think that this is a waste of time. So I'm going to go and say submit. So there it goes. Yes, now my debuggers are running. Good, very nice. So I will say okay. From here he makes a post, and then the post goes to the server, isn't it? There it is. C#. From here again the data comes back and it comes here, and you can see now this data is over here in a collection, and this is right. So it is doing the things properly. After that it clears the record, and that is also fine. and this also gets cleared, and oh, there it is. So basically the problem was just that, you know, we were actually browsing a old site, right? But good, you know, that, you know, from, you know, because of that, you know, we actually saw how to go and debug JavaScript and C# code, right? So you can see now my code is working. So basically if I say testy, you know, then 2003, you know, 1009, and if I say submit, let me quickly run this, right? And I should be able to see my records. So there it is, testy. Now remember that we are not persisting to the database, so you can see that the previous record is not seen, because every time we send a post, a new instance of the web API gets created. So that's why it is not persisting the previous records. These two records are coming from the constructor, right? So good, we are able to make a call to the server, we are getting a collection, and that collection is getting displayed using the ng repeat on the table on the UI. Also, I would like to point towards a very common error which happens when we write ng repeat. If you remember, I said that at the end of the day, Angular creates his own instances, and the scope of these instances are on the tag where the ng controller is. So for example, the scope of this binding code instance is the start of this div tag and the end of this div tag. So what I've seen is, you know, a lot of people, you know, sometimes, you know, by mistake, you know, they write this ng repeat code outside the div tag like this. So if you do that, you know, then what happens is, if you see here, so basically they go and write outside the div tag very quickly. It's still inside the div tag at this moment, so they go and put it here. So if you do this, then what will happen is, so here the binding code instance is from here to here, right? This ng repeat will not work. So remember that, you know, ensure your ng repeat is looping inside the scope, you know, where the binding code instances, okay, or else code will not work. So that was a small thing. Now second thing is, let us we are almost done with this lab, but I would like to go and talk about the performance issues of ng repeat. If you see at this moment, if I do a control F5, let us do a control F5 and let us quickly watch how many watchers is this ng repeat creating, you know, very quickly out of curiosity. Remember, we talked about watchers, we talked about digest cycle in lab 2. So let us do a F12, right? And let us go to Angular, let us go and enable this, and you can see that there are certain watchers that is created, customer amount, customer name, and etc. But now let us go and do a submit. Watch this. Let me do a submit. Can you see? Look at the number of watchers. They are 9, 9, 9, 6. You know, so remember that this ng repeat, again, you know, when you do just a repeat by using such kind of a syntax, right? Such kind of a syntax, it means that he thinks this is a two-way binding. In other words, you know, this needs to be updated. So whatever number of records you have, that many numbers of watchers it creates. Very important. Whatever numbers of records you have, that many number of watchers it creates. So it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to say that this is just one-time binding, right? One time means the first time when the collection loads, it goes and it binds with the grid. After that, we don't intend that the grid will change on type event or something. It will only change from the server, right? If you do a small change like this, now look at the number of watchers, how they get reduced. So I will say reload this. Let's do F12. Let's go to the Batarang tool. Let's enable the Batarang tool. Now let us go and do a submit. If you see here, you know, remember we had 9 watchers that were getting created. Can you see now? We don't have lot. And what has increased? This one-time watch has increased to 36, and that is fine because you know, this is only one time, right? After that, we do not have any implication of this, you know, when the user is typing on the browser, typing on the text box, is clicking on the button. So this is just one time. So just remember that, whenever you are doing ng repeat, and if you're just using that simple expression without the one-time binding, then that many number of watchers get created, so it can have performance implication. Your digest cycle can increase, right? So remember this small tip what I've said at the last. So thank you very much. That brings us to the end of this video. In this video, we were trying to understand how Angular can interact with the server side. How Angular can interact with the server side, send data, receive data, and what configuration we have to do in the web API to ensure that Angular works. Thank you so much.